Right, we're live, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Right. Do you want to go through the first formalities, or shall I?
If you like, I can, Mr. Chair. As we are with all our meetings, for anyone who may be watching this slightly delayed meeting, apologies for the delay. If anybody was waiting, there's a technical issue. The Town Council is still having its committee meetings remotely, with power devolved to myself as acting town clerk. However, with grants, even if we were meeting in person, there would be recommendations, because full council makes the final resolution. Anything from this committee is a recommendation to full council due to the amounts of money involved.
Right. So item 1 is apologies.
Apologies. I've got apologies from Councillor Gow and Councillor Tucker.
Right, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I've volunteered at the Puppet Festival in the past. I've written articles about them for Just Beverley. As the mayor at the moment, I am a trustee of the Minster Old Fund, which will impact on the application from Two Churches One Town, and I'm also a member of the Friends of Beverley Minster.
Yes, I'm also a member of the Friends of Beverley Minster, but I don't really see that impacts on this sufficiently to need a declaration of any significant interest.
Yeah, I do.
Right. Any of the exemptions from expressions of interest?
No, we've had no dispensations, Mr. Chair.
Right. Very good. So we can move. Shall we move to the first item on the agenda?
Yeah.
The first application, councillors, is the application from Beverley Puppet Festival. Just to make you aware, they've given me an update. I'll just find out. I have lots of things on my screen. And I think it's relevant that the committee is aware of this, that they're delighted to announce that they've been granted £75,000 from the Arts Council. But as with funding of this kind, it is subject to confirming their other match funding, which is something to consider when looking at this application.
Yes, we were already aware from what they had given us that our funding was important in terms of creating the background which allowed funding from other organisations. Okay, shall we go through it systematically but without spending too much time?
Yeah, I think they've covered everything.
Yes. The only thing that I was a bit surprised that they didn't seem to cover was DAB. And they do have significant numbers of young people involved. So I think they should at least have a policy, even if they don't have any dedicated persons.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
Yes, sorry.
So if we're looking at the weighting document, Mr. Chair, I was looking at fulfilment of the grant criteria, and I believe that they fulfilled that.
Yep.
In terms of benefit to the town, I think they've laid out a clear case in
Yes.
terms of tourism aspect, the educational aspect. And I did appreciate that they were making the points about the different kinds of performance that, different kinds of puppetry that they use that can also support things like our aim for a cleaner and greener Beverley as well. So that was, I thought, good, which also carries over into, I think, C on the benefit to residents. I thought they had a relatively realistic estimation of the benefit to residents over the 3 years, and that was good. Quality of supporting arguments, I thought this was a model application. In terms of the non-financial documentation, again, I thought they had very good policies. I think I was impressed with their safeguarding policy and so on. And I thought the financial documentation looks solid. And as Matt says, they've got this now expectation of if they can match the funding of 75,000 from the Arts Council. So they look like a very viable long-term partner, which I think is also quite significant for our choice. So yeah, when I'm looking at the weighting, I'm thinking that they've got, I would tick them off in all of the weighting options.
I think so, yes. Very good. So the only thing that we do need before we can, before full council can ratify this, is the new bank account details.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I think we've done in the past, Mr. Chair, is full council ratifies it, and then I liaise with them to sort out their bank details. So we do it that, because if we get the bank details before, it is full council has to ratify. I'm not saying full council will. Full council might not agree with the resolutions from this committee, which has never happened before. But you've got to work on that basis.
Yes. Okay.
I think also just to say as well, I think perhaps we should encourage them, or perhaps even stronger than that, ask them to ensure they put in place a safeguarding policy.
Yes, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they didn't have a safeguarding policy in its general aspects, but the DAB was missing.
DBS.
DBS, sorry.
So a DBS is per person, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's an individual thing. They need a safeguarding policy.
They've got a safeguarding. Yeah. Hang on.
They've got a safeguarding.
That one's the health and safety one. Opportunities. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down through to find the correct.
So they have, if you look at F, which of the following does your organisation have? Constitution, DBS checks, insurance, health and safety policy, non-audited accounts and equal opportunities policy. They haven't ticked the safeguarding policy box.
Okay, so they certainly should have that.
Right.
And they really can adopt one from somebody else with no problems, except that they do have to read it through and understand it.
Yeah.
Well, they should have safeguarding training as well.
Yes, but that's at least the first step toward it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on my notes I've conflated safeguarding and health and safety. That makes sense.
Yeah. Right. So we're agreed on that one?
Yeah.
So if you just hold with me, so I should make these notes.
Yes, and they've identified what they want to spend the money on,
Yes.
which is really important in each of the three years. So
yes,
here it's these particular.
And inevitably, the third year is less detailed, but it's clear what they're hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we do the yearly reviews, that will become more clear, I believe.
Yeah, what I've done, I always prepare for a meeting and I'll be taking notes as we've been going, because so I'll read a formal resolution based on what's been said, and then if someone can propose and second if you're happy with it. So Beverley Town Council recognises the hard work of all concerned with the Puppet Festival, especially as the event not only affords opportunities not otherwise available to residents in Beverley, but as one of the most respected festivals of its kind in the country, it attracts people from far and wide to the town. Many of their aims support the objectives of what Beverley Town Council wishes to achieve for the town. The application is detailed, precise and clear in what funding from the Town Council will help to achieve, especially in terms of innovative outreach work. Councillors considered it to be well written, model application and a viable partner. Therefore, Beverley Town Council is pleased to make the Beverley Puppet Festival a strategic partner and allocates £3,000 per year for 3 years, 22, 23, 24, pending annual review on the provision they adopt a safeguarding policy. That's the town clerk to liaise with the applicant to inform them of this decision.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a proposal and a second for that, Mr. Chair.
I propose from the chair.
I'm happy to second.
Yeah. Supported.
Yeah, so David Horsley to propose and Chloe Hopkins second. Thank you. What I'll do is I'll inform the people that this is the recommendation, and they'll find out after full council the final result. Your next application is 2 churches, 1 town. Before we discuss it, sorry, the other aspect that I just need you to approve as well. Are you happy with the power under which the applications are given? So, because we've got to make sure that we reference a specific power, and with the Puppet Festival, it's section 145, power to contribute to entertainments and the arts, and 44, power to contribute to the encouragement of tourism.
Yes.
Yeah, both of those seem imminently.
Excellent.
Yes, the reason I went back to that is because for two churches, it has to be slightly different. As councillors may know, parish and town councils can't fund religious organisations, even the fabric of churches, things like that. So I sought advice from Ernlicher, and their advice is that because they're requesting very specifically support towards their audit and their website, we can support them, but it would have to be under section 137. That gives the council main care expenditure, which in their opinion is in the interest of and will bring direct benefit to their area or part of it and the inhabitants, etc. However, we've been advised that for 137 we can't approve 3 years. What councillors could consider is approving in principle support them for 3 years. However, they would have to.
It would have to be renewable annually.
Yes, they'll have to supply a new application each year. That could be roughly the same application, just with new dates on. It's a technicality to make sure we still work within the Local Government Act, that if councillors did choose to support this organisation, you need to be aware before you have that discussion that it's not as straightforward as the others, but the same effect could still be there at the end of it.
Yeah.
Good, clear enough.
Yeah.
Linda.
So, so could I say so? I mean, the whole idea with a partnership was that it truly was to help both organisations, and it didn't necessarily have to involve any money. It was all about each organisation helping each other, facilitating better outreach, better everything to do with the town, but ensuring that the partner that we partnered with was a viable organisation, audited accounts, etc., etc. So I don't think it's a difficulty for them to come back each year and just reaffirm how much money they need for what they're asking for.
Yes.
I think is quite reasonable.
Yeah,
that's my thought anyway.
Seems to make sense.
Matt,
So,
can you clarify this point about why, from what you're saying, you're suggesting, I think, that because these are churches, it has to be dealt with under this different section. Am I right?
Yeah. That's the advice from Ernlicher, just to be very cautious to make sure we do it under 137 rather than using the for entertainment or tourism, because whilst the churches will put on entertainment and will be tourist, what they're actually asking for is slightly separate to that. We've just got to be quite cautious to make sure that we're spotting anything connected with religion in any way, that we as a council are not financially supporting the religion as such, and that includes the fabric of the building.
I mean, obviously we'll be guided by you, Matt. I would have thought though that this is a heritage application. These are buildings for of massive heritage value for this town, and I think everybody's proud of these buildings regardless of their religion. We could probably argue that yes, they're churches, but this isn't a religious offering as such. But I mean, it just seemed to be we're making it a bit more difficult for them because of some technical irregularity in a way. And
well, not much more difficult.
Not much more, but nevertheless they have to do a little bit more than say the Beverley Puppet people who've got
Chloe and then
your
Linda.
advice. It seems a little bit odd that we're having to treat them differently because they're a church, and actually this is a heritage grant application, which is wider than religion, I would have thought. But I certainly will be guided by your esteemed input on this, Matt, and the advice that you've taken from Ernlicher.
Chloe and then Linda.
Yeah, if I may. So my concern then, if the advice from Annika is that we can't agree to something for 3 years, is that really we shouldn't then be putting them down as a partner, which is a 3-year agreement, but rather asking them to be as a general grant. And I don't know how that fits with the advice you've received, Matt. It just seems to me that if the advice is that we can't agree to 3 years, then it doesn't seem like we're falling within that advice if we still have we agree for 3 years.
To go back to what Linda said, somebody could apply for a partnership for 3 years for no money, because it's about the wider partnership. We could agree a partnership with them in terms of we support what you do in the widest sense, and we can support you where we can, and deal with the funding on a year by year basis.
Have to make perhaps two things. On the one hand, agree to them as a partner on a no money basis for 3 years.
Yes.
And then as a general grant on the basis of their acceptance, and then each year they'd have to come back for a general grant. Would that be a fair summation of the situation?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we'd require 2 resolutions for this one.
Righto. Linda.
So yes, I agree. We could do what Chloe's suggested, which might be the best way forward. But I think the whole idea of 2 churches, 1 town is, as Dennis said, it's a heritage organisation. It's not about religion. It's about promoting Beverley. And it's, 2 churches just bookend Beverley. And there's a lot of Beverley in that area inside of those 2 bookends.
Yeah, I did explain that to Annika. The advice was you've just got to be incredibly careful when it's how someone else might perceive it, and that's why their advice was to go down this route, because whilst it's a bit trickier, it does mean you can give them the money within the abilities of a town and parish council, which shouldn't be onerous. I can talk to the applicant about it, who I know is very experienced in these things, and it should just be a matter of submitting a document once a year for us to consider. That's why we can agree in principle, but each year we'd have to agree definitely, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though it's going to be for a website and for auditing of the accounts, is it the difficulty the auditing of the accounts rather than the website?
No, it's because it's because they're both connected with the idea of repairing churches. That's one of the core aspects of it, is to repair the churches.
Or potentially so.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay.
Sorry, Paul Hughes. Oh, there's you on, Paul Hughes.
My son-in-law messed about with my iPad and it comes up and says not me. But I'm honestly not Paul. I am a dealer. It's just let's go with it. Well, let's go with what Matt's saying. Agree to them being, like Chloe says, agree to them being a partner, but they've got to submit each year.
Yes.
It sounds like we've no choice. Let's just do it.
That seems to make sense. All agreed?
Yeah.
Very good.
I think we've got no choice. I do reluctantly agree.
Yeah, me too.
Burnlicker are saying, I almost sort of feel like saying to Burnlicker, well, thanks for your advice, we decided to disregard it. Because we don't want to send the wrong message. But that will put Matt in a difficult position, and I don't want.
We could have problems.
We could have problems. So yeah, I agree with what Anne says. Let's just reluctantly go with it. And if they're very switched on, they seem to be quite happy to come back to it every year. So let them do that. I'm sure they'll be happy with that.
You just bear with me. I'm just typing this up so I can read it back to you.
You could say we reluctantly agree. It's I don't know. But anyway.
We absolutely welcome them as a partner.
Yeah.
I think
it's very prestigious. All their advertising boards will now have the Beverley Town Council logo on them. How is that? And all their material, all their bids will have Beverley Town Council on them, as and we should reciprocate, obviously. So I think they're a very, very important organisation in the town with very prestigious trustees.
This is what I've written, and one of the paragraphs I'm about to work on. Beverley Town Council acknowledges that Two Churches, One Town is a hugely significant project, which has taken much hard work, commitment, and specialism to reach its current stage. Whilst the organisation already has considerable money, this has to be spent on very specific aspects, such as the fabric of the churches. You've also got to consider that they do have a lot of money. Why can't it be used for that? That's because the vast majority of their funding is specifically just for the fabric. The Town Council is not permitted to finance that area of the work Two Churches and One Council wish to deliver, but it can support the very specific aspects for which the funding is requested. Supporting the annual audit fee will provide organisation sustainability, whilst the website is a promotional tool, not just for the project, but the town as a whole, and therefore acceptable for the Town Council support. However, as this is being allocated under Local Government Act 1972, Section 137, the Town Council resolves to enter into a 3-year non-financial agreement as a partner. The Town Council also enters into a general grant agreement to provide this funding on the principle for 3 years. And I need to refine that language slightly, and then I'll liaise with the applicant.
Yeah,
So
I'm happy to be proposing that one. I think that covers exactly what we've said there.
Very good.
So I have Councillor Hopkins proposing it, and
I'll second.
thank you. Your final application is from Beverley Lemgo Twinning Association. Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. Do we have to propose to make them a partner and then propose to give them a general grant? Do we have to do two?
No.
I've embedded it within the same resolution.
Right, that's fine.
That one is like, yeah, that's fine.
Just making sure.
Therefore, your final applicant is the Beverley Lemgo Twinning Association for their Beverley Hansa project.
Right. Right. This one's the awkward one. It's a very eloquent application, but hasn't paid very much attention to the questions asked. That's the problem. Shall we go through it systematically?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, where it says the quality of supporting arguments and non-financial documentation, I am quite concerned that when they're proposing to fund things like youth trips and so on, that there is no safeguarding policy and no health and safety policy. Both of those would seem to me to be quite essential to the work that they're proposing to go.
Right. Also, that they don't seem to appreciate that while we can fund such trips, any policy for choosing who goes on them must be done on a basis of the people of Beverley and not the Old Pals Act. And that needs to be spelt out.
Well, I think as well, in the past, we've turned down applications, haven't we, from very...
Where we have believed that the numbers were very small. Yes.
Because there was one person going.
Yes.
And I mean, I've got a few issues with this, apart from what Chloe mentioned with regard to health and safety and to safeguarding. The GDPR compliance was poor. In the application we saw contained personal details, which I understand the town clerk has redacted.
Yeah. I could just confirm that one of the supporting documents is their membership subs, a sheet from the membership subs, which wasn't redacted, so it gave the individual names and the subs they pay. But I redacted that from the version that went public into councillors.
And that, that's probably another issue as well, isn't it? The fact that it's the income that they've got is from monthly memberships rather than being a truly community organisation. It's difficult that there's some great ideas within this, but they're a bit nebulous.
Yes, and when they did deal with funding, it was rather odd that some things they were spending money on and other things they were making money out of. And there didn't seem to be any logic about the difference between the two. You know, I mean, they were actually, the Stamtish was actually costing them money, when you'd have thought that the people coming would have contributed.
Mm.
Any other comments? I think overall, looking at each of these things one after another, we have to say that under about 3 of them, they fail to really answer the question that is asked. And the underlying spirit of the town council approach to strategic partnerships, where we have to be convinced that the people of Beverley as a whole are benefiting.
If I've made some notes. I've been carrying on as we've been talking. So if it was forming some sort of resolution, but the comments I've got so far is whilst Beverley Town Council applauds the enthusiasm of the Beverley Lemgo Association's Hansard project application, it expresses concerns regarding entering into a 3-year partnership for the maximum possible amount of funding available. The council feels that some questions were not answered sufficiently. Some supporting documents were missing. There was confusion regarding the proposed income streams, and the purpose of the grant, whilst well-meaning, was not focused enough. There was also some concern. There was also a GDPR concern due to names of association members and the subs they pay being included in the application without the redaction of personal details. In addition, part of the application suggested that exchange visits between young people would form part of the project, but it did not state how many. The Town Council cannot provide financial support to individuals, which is what might effectively be the case based on the information provided regarding individuals going on exchanges. In addition, the group does not have any safeguarding or health and safety policies and procedures in place, which are vital for this kind of work with young people, although they do say they would put these in place if needed.
Good.
Yeah.
So having said that, the question is, on the application we got, I mean, it's clear we can't make them a strategic partner, but can we do anything for them?
You are completely within your rights as a committee to suggest something else to them or offer them a small or general grant.
I think my concern with the general grant is actually similar in that if, for example, they asked for the funding for youth trips, again, without knowing specifics, you know, if it was a case of we're proposing that we're going to help fund like groups of young people to undertake some kind of a project within Beverley, or in order to have some kind of association with the twinning setup, if it ends up being that there's 1 or 2 people who are able to take advantage, I'm not sure that we can support that even in a general grant.
Yes.
Which is a shame, because I do, you know, I think as a town council we're quite supportive of the idea of the participation in the Hansa League and all that comes with that, and certainly want to be able to see the town making connections and so on. But we need something, I think, an application that's more specific, that perhaps focuses on things like the promotion of the town at the festivals, something like that, where we could maybe make a case on tourism that it's looking to benefit a wider group of people. I'm not sure on the basis of this current application that we could go forward. I don't know what other councillors feel.
I'd agree, Claire. I think.
Yeah.
I think that are we entitled, Matt, to say that we're rejecting their application for a partnership grant, but we are not rejecting any possibility of an application for a grant, provided that it is more specific about exactly what is being funded, so that it comes within our remit.
You could, for example, again, I've just been making notes, and I was thinking earlier as well, considering what council might say. You could add to the resolution, therefore taking all the information into consideration, Beverley Town Council encourages the Beverley Lemgo Association to submit a general grant application for a specific detailed project. For example, a specific Hansa Festival Day clearly budgeted. This could be considered at the next full council meeting after which it's received. I think what councillors are saying is when you, forgive me if I'm wrong, but when you've looked at the other applicants, both tonight and the past ones, they've been very specific. I think the way that the Puppet Festival said very specifically what it would do with each year. I know there's a complication with how we fund the two churches, but it's very specific for those two items. And you could, rather than say we're not going to give any money, that you could resolve to encourage the group to submit for a general grant, and you're advising them it would have to be down this more specific route.
Yes.
So for example, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, but say, I mean, we have indicated that we would like to do the food festival. If that's going to happen, maybe they could have a stall at the food festival to promote the Hansa League and have maybe German food or whatever, and that would be a specific project that they would be involved in.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly that kind of thing. I think we need something very clear about exactly what we would be funding.
And then they could have more than one such project, but they would have to be specific projects. With specific funding justified by a little project analysis.
Yeah, with a proper budget and a date and a time and all the rest of it. Yeah, I think the other thing I think which strikes me with regard to the Puppet Festival is they've got all these other income streams lined up. They've obviously done the work, and one is dependent on another, and that isn't the case with regard to this particular application.
Yeah.
There kind of aren't these other tentacles into other areas of Beverley life.
Yeah, and we asked them at one point, in effect, we're asking them what would the benefit be to the people of Beverley, and they say nothing at all about the people of Beverley in their response.
Can I make a point?
Dennis.
Yeah, thanks. I think it probably needs to be made clear that from what you're saying, really, that there's a problem, I think, with the way this application has been put together. And in particular, section 2, where you're seeking, what you're seeking funding for, describe the purpose for which you're seeking funding and maximum 300 words. And I think if we're going to go back to them, this should be given as an example of the sort of detail that we want here, because they've said Hansa Beverley joined Beverley Lemgo and requires a great deal more funding for sending students overseas, joining shared tents and scientific weekend events. That's very nebulous. A great deal more funding, really, if you compare that with the answer to section 2A on the churches one, for example, and the puppet one, they've gone into quite a lot of detail specifically about the website costs and the marketing costs and things. Now, I don't know whether it's the fact that they've misunderstood the level of detail that we want on these application forms. But I think what we must say to them is that the door isn't shut at all, and that we want to see more detail for specific projects, and that would make them eligible for some form of grant. But unfortunately, the crafting of this application form has been the problem, not the concept of what they are there to support. And I take the point about the reach of something like this as well. But yeah, I think as long as they get some clear feedback as to why they've not got a partnership grant, that's what's going to happen, and some positive steps as to how they can achieve funding by spelling it out a lot more in their grant application.
Yes, we're happy with the general aims and their enthusiasm for them. What we need, however, is specific objectives and how much funding those specific objectives will need.
Yeah, exactly. I think the fact that 2A includes etc. as this is our purpose.
Yeah.
Not ideal. But that doesn't mean that we discount the sort of the aims and the ideas of their organisation. We do just.
Well, but I think we've got to question as well. I mean, that's joining in shared tents in Hanseatic Week. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, tent, sharing tent. I mean, what does it mean? I don't want to even guess what it means, but it's not very clear what it means. And I think the level of detail is absolutely missing, and you're right to say etc. That there's 300 words. I mean, they've written about 20, I think, and I would have thought that where a word guide is given like that, it does actually suggest that the more you write, the more detail. We are looking for a certain amount of detail. Oh, it says maximum. I accept that, but I think it's a little bit vague. But I want to give them the right message back. All of these groups are worthy groups, and as long as we've got specific reasons for the decision that we've come to, and pointing them in the right direction, and helping them with the future grant funding for something specific, I think that for me is the key thing.
Just a question, Matt. Did Two Churches One Town contact you to ask you for assistance in completing their application, or the Puppet Festival? Did they contact you? And
no, they didn't. But part of that, I think, is because they're both very, very experienced in the funding process, and the Puppet Festival has been writing bids for years. To get where they are with what they've got for the Two Churches, so are they. They're a very professional body. I think some. I shouldn't really have a personal opinion, but my professional opinion, having previously been a funding bid writer, and when I write bids in this role as the clerk, it is that clarity and how specified something is that maybe needs support. And there's nothing wrong with councillors offering advice and support, as long as councillors don't make a decision or any decision about whether or not they'll support it. Councillors can advise as to how to write a bid.
Yes.
What the in a general sense of what the council is looking for in a successful application.
Yes.
I think, especially as these documents are public, an applicant can see what other people have submitted and have been successful.
I think that's an important point, Matt, because again, if you compare, I mentioned the Two Churches, but if you look at the Puppet one, at their section 2A, and section 2A really is the nub of all these applications, isn't it? Because this is really the bit where we say, tell us what you want the money for. And if you look at what the Puppet Festival have written, year 1, 2022, and 2,000 for this and 1,000 for that, and the squid and the interim outreach project delivery costs in 20, it's laid out by year and it's laid out by amount required. So if there was such a thing as an exemplar model application that Beverley Lemgo could perhaps look at, and as these are public documents, I would point them to those and say that's the kind of detail that we want, rather than we want lots more money to send people into tents, etc. It really needs to have a little bit more detail behind it, because it's a lot of money. So I would, as long as they get that message, I think that's the key thing, Chair, that they get that message and that we are positive about their general overall aims.
And not to discourage them, because certainly the Hansa bit has got massive potential, hasn't it, going forward?
Yes. It might be useful also to be absolutely clear that we cannot support anything that is actually going to a very small number of individuals. It must be for broad groups with a potential for almost anybody in Beverley to join such groups.
If I could, Mr. Chair, that is the exact sort of advice that councillors could give anyone applying for an application. You're not telling them what to write. You're telling them this is the this is the realm of what the grants are about and what we can and cannot fund in general. So I've added into what I've also read out. The Town Council appreciates the general aims and enthusiasm of the application, but it requires more specific details and explanations to be successful. This was particularly evident in section 2.A, one of the main sections of the application, which lacked specifics.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
Yes.
And do you still want to include the bit about encouraging them to apply? Therefore, we encourage the association to submit a general grant application for a specific
Project.
A specific project or projects.
Or projects, for example, a Hansa Festival Day clearly budgeted out, attending a specific range of events to promote the project, etc. This will be considered at the next full council meeting after which it is received.
Yeah. Is it worth saying you can ask for help, or you can look at other people's applications?
It is also advised that the applicant may wish to seek advice from members of the council.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And do we need to spell out as well that these grants are for the wider benefit of Beverley? They're not for individuals, you know.
Yeah, I think that's probably worth saying, because I wouldn't want them to come back and say it's going to cost exactly this much for us to send one young person.
Yeah.
You know.
And it does. I do have earlier on it from earlier. In addition, part of the application suggests that exchange visits between young people would form part of the project, but it did not state how many. The Town Council cannot provide financial support to individuals, which is what might effectively be the case based on the information provided.
Yeah, they are. I just think that needs to be stated, because I'd hate for them to go away and come back with specifics of something we then still couldn't fund.
So if you had the benefit must be for as many people as possible, or the wider town in general.
Yeah.
Are we going to make a comment about the fact that this seems to be a membership organisation rather than a community organisation, which kind of, you know, they've stated that their income is from membership rather than from a wider community?
Is that just the Lengo bit?
I'm not quite sure, Anne.
Well, you could say, on the basis of the information you have given, you appear to be.
I think
we're not saying they are, but that's the impression they've given.
I think councillors may need to just bear in mind that whilst it wasn't their only source of income, Beverley Rugby Club was a successful partner, and a large part of their income does come from membership, although they do have a wider income pool as well.
But they were very specific about our contribution being for the good of the wider community rather than for the good of the rugby club.
Yeah.
Well, there is a part in here about confusion regarding the proposed income streams.
Yeah.
It's just to clarify, to make sure that they kind of understand what the responsibilities we have in giving them the money. That we're not trying to prevent them from, you know, applying for a grant.
Or doing the work to kind of try and build international connections or promote the town. But I mean, especially with the hands of things, I can envisage all sorts of ways where if they're taking part in the festivals, that they might want to, you know, fund something that showcases Beverley. But in that case, we'd need a specific like budget for how that's done. And, you know, alternatively, whether they're looking at ways to kind of build with other groups. There's all sorts of things I can think where they could be specific and have something that's more of a wider project. It just needs to come from them that that's what they're looking for from us.
Right, Matt. Well, we seem to be agreed, and you seem to have got it into words.
Yeah, and remember these are draft minutes. Well, they're not draft, but they're minutes that still need to be approved. So if there are any, if you require any changes to what the resolutions are, that can be done at full council.
Yes, good.
So if you want anything removing or anything adding, that can change. That can be done there, because these will be as resolutions, probably because of the length of them, there'll be an appendix, but they'll be on as resolutions that can be then resolved as or altered by full council.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you need a proposer for this one, Matt?
Yes, please. Yeah. And again, the power under which we could give funding for that seemed to fall under best under 144, power to contribute to the encouragement of tourism. So that's so we if it had been, that would be the power that we would have used.
Yeah.
Yes.
Could I just ask before we close, what's the effect of these? What would be the effect of these two that we've approved on our grants budget? Do we know?
I don't off the top of my head, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine. This is the first time that we've not had the situation, as other councils will remember, where we've had people asking for more money than we have, so that it doesn't affect the budget. If the two partnerships that you've approved tonight go through, that's 7 of the 8 partnership spaces that was agreed. So you may, at the next meeting, I'll liaise with the chair. It may be that you want to review that again based on the figures, the amount of money, because that was part of the issue, that how much money would be the fact that one of the applicants tonight only asked for 1,200 as opposed to the whole amount, means that there may be flexibility to raise that from 8 to 10. If we need to look at the figures for going forwards, because it's been 3 years, we've got to look forward for future budgets as well.
I think the crucial factor in the end is not going to be the money. It's going to be the extent to which councillors' time is going to be eaten up by being ambassadors. In some organisations, I think being an ambassador will be a doddle, and it'll just be a matter of going on occasionally and giving them a pat on the back. But in others, I think it may be quite a responsible job.
And of course, mentioning ambassadors, Mr. Chair, we don't select ambassadors now. They're done at full council, because it's full council making the decision, and there's a wider pool of people to burden.
Perhaps when we come to discussing that at full council, Matt, we could have a list of our current partners and who is already an ambassador to them.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, Matt, when this comes to full council, if we could have it sort of showing against what our budget situation is, just so that full council has that oversight of what's going on. I think, just for the clarity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Like, Mr. Chair, if you're done, Mr. Chair, I shall close the Zoom stream.
Very well.